The story I'm about to tell happened when I was just over 13 years old and living in a neighborhood on the outskirts of São Paulo, Brazil. My family consisted of my father, mother, my younger brother who was 8 years old at the time, and myself. We were a simple but happy family, and one of the things my father, a kind and hard-working man, insisted on was having the family gathered at the table during meal times. It was during one of these gatherings that something horrible happened. We were having dinner and chatting as usual, talking about our day when my father leaned over the table. We thought he was feeling unwell, so I put my hand on his shoulder and asked, "Dad, are you okay?" Suddenly, my father lifted his head, and I'll never forget that look. His face had transformed, and his eyes were full of pure hatred. He stared at me intensely and said, "I'm not your father." I'll never forget that voice. It didn't sound like my father at all. My mother, frightened, asked what was happening. He turned quickly to her and spewed curses and insults that I had never heard from him before. I was getting desperate. My little brother was crying and pleading for my father to stop, but in yet another terrible act, he turned to my brother and screamed, "Shut up, you piece of shit. I hate you, I hate all of you. I'll finish you all." In an act of desperation, my mother started to pray, but even her prayers were drowned out by my brother's desperate screams and my father's horrible insults. But that wasn't my father. At one point, he began to shout more aggressively, pounding on the table until he fell unconscious on the floor, and at the same time, the trapdoor of the roof seemed to have exploded and shattered on the ground. My father woke up dazed, as if he had just woken up from a deep sleep, and asked why he was on the floor. Seeing the family's despair, he started to panic. I remember my mother took him to their bedroom, where they talked for long minutes with the door closed while I hugged my brother as if to protect him from something. Over the following weeks, my father sought medical help, underwent examinations, and nothing, absolutely nothing abnormal was found. Unfortunately, our lives changed after that night. I still don't know, at 38 years old, what that was. I can't find an explanation. We were always a happy family and had never done anything to harm anyone. But if the purpose of that being, or whatever it was to really destroy us, it succeeded in some way. We could never look at our father the same way again. We were afraid, and we never had a father-son relationship again. We drifted apart, and my father, without understanding the reasons well, fell into a deep depression that culminated in the end of his marriage, leading him to drown in alcohol. My brother, now an adult, also suffers from depression, takes medication, and has not seen our father as a father since that day. Honestly, I can't find an explanation for why that happened, but I know that somehow that thing really did destroy us.